Well, thank you so much for attending a flood seminar today. I will also let you guys know I am doing a full flood seminar tomorrow with the city of Austin. They will be speaking about the rules for the city of Austin, and then I will be speaking about FEMA rules. So if you want to go deeper into this conversation, we will be having a class officially tomorrow with the city of Austin and FEMA. I represent FEMA. All right. So Paul Guerrero with Allstate Insurance, celebrating our 18th year with Allstate. We have 3 locations to serve y'all, 2 in Austin and 1 in Kyle. We have 15 amazing employees to serve you guys, and we are a referral only office. We only deal with people who are buying houses or refinancing. That is our niche, and so we work well with realtors and lenders. And so we will write, one of y'all who are like shopping for insurance, but our niche is people who are buying houses or refinancing. So we're really good at the process. We did over 2,196 homes last year. So we are really good. If you check our Facebook page, I saved a real estate deal last night for a realtor who wouldn't have closed without had to interrupt date night to step away to help her out. But I'm willing to do that for y'all. I don't really quote anymore. I literally just answer phone calls to y'all, answer questions, and answer scenarios. Okay, that's what I do. So my cell phone number, if you want to write it down, is 512-541-0970. And I'll put in the chat in case you missed it, but just save that for random insurance questions. It doesn't have to be home insurance. It could be car insurance or whatever. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about clue reports, and I'm also going to talk about flood. Okay, but let me start quickly with I'm going to share the experience level here with all of you guys. But if you're new to the business, it's critical to have a title company, an inspector, an insurance guy, a mortgage company, a roofer, and so your partnerships determine your success. And so if you've got great partners who know what they're doing and understand the importance of closing on time and a great experience, it'll make your life so much easier, and you have someone to be held accountable to it. So that's what we do. So let's get started. All right, let's first talk about a clue report. All right, do y'all know what a clue report is? Who wants to be first? No. All right, so let me show you what a clue report is. Okay, guys. Now, just so you know, I pay for participation. Okay, so I will be at y'all's office tomorrow with some fresh cookies and some Yeti cups. And so if you participate and win, I'll have some giveaways for tomorrow at y'all's office. All right, so I'm going to share my screen real quick and show y'all what this is. All right, share. All right, a clue report is a report that I can pull on a house in the event that the seller forgot about a loss. Okay, so seller's disclosure comes out, you put an offer in the house, offer is accepted. On day 1 of option period, you call me and say, hey, Paul, right, there's an email that we can do with you and say, hey, Paul, we put an offer in this house, we're on option period, will you please run a clue report? And you CC your client, and it tells you exactly what a clue report is. Okay, and so we will show you what it is. And so what it does is it pulls a history on that house for the last 5 years. Okay, so if that person who sold that house forgets to disclose they had a water loss, or they forgot they had a hailstorm loss, this will pull those losses for you. Okay, because a lot of times sellers will forget to talk about a claim that they had. The biggest mistake people don't understand is if you call USAA and say, hey, a hailstorm passed through last night, will you come check out my roof? Well, that's a claim for the next 5 years. And then another hailstorm comes through and you file a claim, well, that's a claim for the next 5 years. And so when I pull a clue report, it's got 15 claims on that house. And guess what? That's gonna be very hard or expensive to insure, okay? Because the losses travel with your prior houses and the house you're buying. So it's very important. Here's an example of one. This is a $100,000 loss that someone forgot about, forgot to disclose. And so I've got some pretty funny ones in the Buda area where the year before, the seller's agent forgot to disclose a $300,000 fire claim. Was not, they just forgot about it. And so you do research on the school district, on the taxes, on the comps, but you have no way to pull research on the actual house you're buying. And so a clue report pulls history on the house you're buying to make sure nothing pops up at the end, okay? Because the big deal is water losses, guys. If someone had a water loss and it wasn't done correctly, you may have mold behind the walls that your client doesn't know about until they begin doing some reconstruction or they begin having issues, okay? So water losses are what we're most concerned about. And obviously, you know, that's the biggest one we really care about, because it will affect the premium. Even though it's not your client's loss, when you buy that house, you inherit the losses that house had, okay? So does anyone have any questions on a clue report by any chance?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So you said a while ago that you can, like, we can call Allstate and find that out. So does Allstate pull the losses for every insurance company? Like, is it standard in Texas that one insurance company can go into that database and pull that? Or is it like one per insurance company? You have to call Allstate, you have to call USAA, you have to call Farmers Insurance, all of those.
That's a great question. And so so when we pull a clue report, so there's a national database that 90% of insurance companies subscribe to, okay? And so when you file a claim, any major Farmer, State Farm, Nationwide, State Farm, whoever, they all prescribe to this database, and we pull from this database. So I can pull losses for any insurance company. Now, AAA doesn't contribute to that database, and some of the generals, stuff like that, they don't contribute to it. But it can pull 90% of prior losses. Now, here's the deal: most insurance companies are major brand, and we'll know, but it could come up. There is a percentile that if someone has a small insurance company no one's ever heard of, and they don't prescribe to this database, it may not pop up. So there is a 1% that could happen, but any insurance agent should be able to pull a report. Most people charge for it. We don't charge for it because that's all we do. So yeah, answer your question. It pulls all insurance companies.
Yes, sir. You answered my question. Thank you.
Of course. All right, so let's go into flood now, okay? So for those of y'all who have experience in the past, flood insurance was a little complicated in the past. You had to get what's called an elevation certificate, okay? And then we get a rate, and then it could be different. So what they did is they came out with what's called risk rating 2.0, okay? FEMA did, and it's supposed to improve the process. It improved the process for some, and I wouldn't say screwed, but it didn't do good for others, okay? And so what they did is they pulled databases from all these different vendors and put them all into one database to determine a better rate on a house, okay? So a year ago, if I had bought $1 million house and it was not in a flood zone, the rate would be $250 a year, okay? Or if I bought a $100,000 house and I'm not in a flood zone, I could still buy insurance and it'd be $250 a year. Well, they changed all that, and we'll go over those questions. We'll go over those scenarios here, okay? So National Flood, so this is called Risk Rating 2.0, okay? It came out in October of this past year, and these are the things that we'll cover as we go through this, okay? So what do they do? They brought together a lot of different risks, okay? So now we have individualized risk for every house. So someone may be, I live on, my address is 399 Nameless Road. Well, the guy next to me on 386 Nameless Road could have a completely different rate than I have based on the slope of our house, based on the national statistics and stuff like that, okay? It also pulled in more data when it comes to different types of pools, okay? So it's pulling in a lot more data, and it also makes it less complex for getting a rate. So now you can just say, hey, Paul, I got a client. He's moving here from Houston or Louisiana. He's on top of a mountain, but he still wants flood insurance. What's the rate going to be? Well, I can go into a system now and tell you exactly what it's going to be within 5 minutes. Well, I say 10 minutes, okay? Or if someone's buying in a flood zone, it used to take, you know, a couple, like 48 hours to 36 hours to get a quote back. Now it's immediate. So it makes it a little bit easier to get a quote, okay? So here's what happened last year. The big thing was in October of 2021, this new system came out, and effective this year, every policy is now goes into this new system of rating 2.0. Now, in the past, you used to be able to transfer an old flood policy, which was grandfathered, to a new customer who bought that house. That is going away, okay? So now there's not going to be a lot of grandfathered policies out there, because some people, their house has been moved deeper and deeper into a flood zone, but they're still paying $600 a year, and their house is flooded 3 times. And now someone else is coming there and buying that house. Well, the new person buying the house would only be $600. Now it's going to be the correct rate for the future, okay? So I used to sell to customers like, listen, they're coming from Florida or Houston or places that were prone to flooding. People wanted to buy flood insurance even though they're not in a flood zone, and so they would have what's called like preferred policies. So that is going away as well. There's no longer a preferred policy anymore that says exactly like, hey, it's $250 a year. So that's now gone, okay? Now, the people who had preferred policies, like I recommend in the past, they're going to see a steady increase each year. Kind of like the best way I can compare it for you guys is people who have their taxes and it increases 1% each year, but it maxes out at a certain percentile. Well, that's what flood is doing. Flood is going to increase people's premium each year to get to what their actual premium should be for the future. All right, let me stop for a second. Are there any questions so far? Okay, perfect.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, so it's safe to say flood insurance does not cost the same today as it did a year ago?
No,
They did go
not.
up.
It will be going up each year. Now, the good thing is that certain customers who were paying a higher amount, but their house wasn't really in a flood zone, they were trying to fight it. Because in the past, we would get an elevation certificate. We would appeal to the city of Austin saying, no, this is not correct. And it's a year-long process to prove. You would need engineering reports, all this kind of stuff. Well, if that's true now, we can rerun the numbers, and now that their premium could go down. Okay. So, but what percentage of people is that? It's obviously a very small percentage. Most people are going to see an increase in premium. Okay. But it's only going to increase a little bit each year. There's a neighborhood in Kyle, it's near the railroad tracks. I think it's a Lennar community that was butts up right against a flood zone. Okay. And they built out of that flood zone apparently, but those people may start seeing a increase. We don't really know. I have to pull that exact address. I can tell you exactly what the premium is going to be for the future. Okay. So this slide just says it's going to steady increase each year by 3%, and eventually it'll get to the normal rate. Okay. All right. This is what a declaration page looks like for flood insurance. Okay. It breaks down the big confusing thing for most people, for most new realtors, is I'm buying a house for $1 million. Okay. And you're only selling my customer $250,000 worth of coverage. Okay. That can be confusing for the consumer, but that's the max that FEMA will do for a client. Okay. So they can only purchase $250,000 of coverage for the dwelling and $100,000 of coverage for the personal property. Okay. So flood covers the structure and the things downstairs, like the furniture and TVs and stuff that's damaged on the first floor if it's flooded. Okay. So in the future, this is what's going to look like. Okay. So it's going to say, here's $250,000 of coverage. Your deductible is $1,000. No contents, because this would be for an investor who bought a house in a flood zone. So no contents coverage, because not concerned about contents, only concerned with their structure. Okay. You scroll down here, talks about the main dwelling, talks about, elevations and stuff like that. Okay. Number of units, 55. Okay. Now come over here. Here's your premium, $1,500 a year. Contents is $1,000 a year. These are all like the premiums and stuff. Okay. So premium should be $21.75, okay? But what's happening right now is they're getting credits and discounts and stuff like that. So the discounted premium is $1,675. So the premium they're paying per year is $2,090, but they're going to be looking forward to it going up $1,600 in the future, okay? Because this is the discounts they're getting because of the caps. So each year it's going to increase by $500 to get to the point where it's actually at that higher premium where this goes away, okay? So that's just kind of an example of what a report would look like for the future, okay? So it's going to steady increase at the capped amount of $500 for this year. All right. Questions?
What was the 100,000 cap for?
For contents. So like your furniture, your anything on the bottom floor. Okay. So like, you know, I'm trying to think like furniture, couches, tables, TVs, entertainment centers, anything that's touching the ground that you couldn't elevate above the ground, that would cover your contents.
But this policy just doesn't have it.
Yeah, this example is an investor who doesn't care about contents. They only care about the structure.
Okay.
Okay. So just an example, but in most situations, there's not a house in Austin that costs less than $250,000 to rebuild. So the max you can buy from FEMA is $250,000. Now, client says, well, I want $700,000 of coverage. Well, then we go to a third party at that point. We would buy the FEMA. So it's the cheapest that you can buy. And then you go to a third party, you can buy from there. Now, I have people on the coast who will not buy a FEMA policy. They will only purchase third-party flood insurance companies because they don't want to deal with FEMA. Example, I would call him like a grandfather to me, Mr. Henry. He had a condo down the coast. Well, everyone else in his condo had FEMA and he had a third party. He had a check written to him. The second the water was gone and you could go down there, he had a check in hand within 2 weeks. The FEMA people, it took upwards of 2 to 3 months to get a check to begin construction, okay? So he was lucky because he had a check in hand within a week, and then he was able to hire someone and get the work started early, okay? Makes sense? So you can buy third party up front, but this is the cheapest way to go, all right? Let's see, I won't go into this, but you can buy, no matter where your house is at, if it's on top of a mountain or at the bottom of a hill, you can buy flood insurance anywhere, okay? Here are the basic factors when it comes to flood insurance, okay? Replacement costs. Now, like I said, in the past, if I had $1 million house, the premium was the same as a $100,000 house. Well, that has changed. If you need more coverage for replacement cost, the premium is going to be more expensive. If the foundation is concrete versus being a pier and beam, it's going to be cheaper. If you've got pass-throughs, it's going to be cheaper. The square footage as well. If I had a 10,000 square foot house versus a 2,000 square foot house, the premium in the past would be the same, not anymore. So all these things are factoring in to the new rates, determine what the new rate would be, okay? Let's see. So that's kind of just for your information, okay? This kind of breaks down, I won't get, this is more insurance related stuff. I won't get into this, but this kind of shows you like these, how premiums have fluctuated over the years. Someone has a claim, premium goes up. After a couple of years, it goes down, it goes back up. It's now going to be a steady rate for the future. I don't know if you guys know too much about FEMA, but FEMA is an insolvent situation, okay? The amount of money they're paying out right now does not equal what they're bringing in. So this is their first attempt to bring in more money to help pay claims more efficiently and better for the future, okay? So, but FEMA, they pay for everything from flooding to hurricanes to tornadoes, and they just don't have enough money to pay all of it. So they're trying to get more money in, okay? This goes into replacement cost. For you newer agents, this is good for insurance 101, okay? I'm buying a house in Terrytown for $2 million, okay? It's a 2,500 square foot house. The insurance agent is only giving coverage of $750,000. But wait a minute, I'm buying for $2 million. Why is there such a big difference? what's called replacement cost. We don't care about land value. We only care about what it costs to rebuild the structure. So the insurance amount, the premium is based off of the structure rebuild costs, not what you bought it for, not what the market is inflated, not inflation, nothing. It's just what it costs to rebuild a house. Now, if you guys own houses and you have home insurance, it's a great time to call your agent and review your coverages, because a year ago, you could rebuild a house for anywhere between $125 to $200 a square foot. We are now looking at $225, $250, $300, depending on how custom the house is, $300 a square foot to rebuild a house. Now, my house was a custom house, and my builder built it for $225 a foot. He told me he wouldn't even consider looking at my house for less than $300 a square foot at this point. And so you just got to understand the market is changing. Inflation has happened, and wood costs more, labor costs more, materials are harder to get. So just building a house costs more. So it's a good time to review your current home insurance policy. And if you're a realtor trying to touch your old clientele, a good video to send out to your clients is, hey guys, thank you for buying a house from me for the last 5 years. I'm not sure who your insurance agent is, but due to the increased cost of rebuilding a house, it may be a good time to have a great conversation with your insurance agent to increase your coverage, because our system has what's called a inflation guard built into it. And it's a national statistic, and it goes up by 3 to 5% each year, okay? Well, this year, our system went up by 15%, and that's a national average. That's not a local Austin statistic. And I would tell you, in our market, it's gone up anywhere between 20 to 25% to rebuild a house in our market because of how crazy things are. Make sense? So that's replacement cost. The preferred risk policies, these are going away. There's no longer preferred policies anymore. But you can, if you feel like, hey, I don't agree with this rate, you can still get a elevation certificate and fight the rate, but it's going to take an engineering report and an elevation certificate and a lot more details to fight a rate. But at this point, they'll say you can submit it for rates. But right now, FEMA is so overwhelmed, you may not get a response back for months. So just know we can still fight a rate, but for closing purposes, they're gonna have to take the rate they're given, and then we can fight it afterwards. Okay. All right. I'll just give you the answer to this one. It's all the above. So now we factor replacement cost, type of foundation, construction type, first floor, how high the floor is above the floodplain. Okay. So that's where ratings are all based off of nowadays. Now, these are where your discounts are. This is where your discounts are at to get better rates. Okay. If you install a flood opening, what is a flood opening? It is, if someone is in like a pier and beam house, they can build pretty much like a hole that flows through the bottom of the house so water can get through quickly and doesn't damage the house. Okay. Obviously you need to engineer and stuff like that, but you can do that. If you do decide to, so I have a couple people who have house on the lake. If you decided to spend the money to elevate your house higher than it currently is, then you could get a discount. I mean, that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I doubt anyone's going to do that, but in the future, if a flood does wipe your house out and it disappears, if you build your house higher than it was before, you could get a discount for doing that. Okay. Elevating machinery and equipment. That would be example of that would be like your AC units, electrical units around your house, the AC, pool equipment. If you elevate it above the floodplain, then you could get a better rate. Okay. Flood proofing your house. I mean, we're talking about expensive fixes here, but also the community, like that neighborhood in Kyle by the railroad tracks in the flood zone. If the community is doing things to help prevent it, you do get discounts for that as well. All right. There's no longer a need for elevation certificates. So for you longtime realtors, we used to be really big on elevation certificate. It was a pain in the butt because if you got to closing or you're 2 weeks out from closing, you find out it's in a flood zone. You got to get an elevation certificate, which takes about a week to get. It costs your buyer $800 to $1,000, and now we have a new rate. So the good thing is we can determine on day one of option period is it in a flood zone, doesn't have any losses, and it avoids drama. I've got 4 daughters, and so I don't do drama. So let's try to avoid it at all possible purposes, okay? Let's see, nothing really for y'all here. But this is just saying, this is the new quoting software, but you still can get private flood insurance if you choose to, okay? It is available out there, all right? So this is quoting for me that you don't need to see. Here's, if you were to walk away from this conversation and say, what did I learn from this conversation? Here's what I want you to learn, okay? If you have any doubts at all that a house might be in a flood zone, if you got any questions at all on, Paul, what did you say about this? Just call my cell phone, okay? And I will walk you through the situation. If you've got a scenario, like my buyer wants to, here's the biggest question I get, okay? I have a buyer, they're buying in Bastrop. The house is in a flood zone and my buyer wants to build, there's a mobile home there now. And my buyer wants to build. The back half of the property is in a flood zone, but the front isn't. How much is the insurance going to be? I cannot tell you the answer to that because the rate is not determined until the house sits on the structure, okay? But the higher I can tell you the base elevation on how high the elevation is, and then your builder can build the slab above the floodplain, and the higher it is above the floodplain, the cheaper the insurance is, okay? So I really can't tell you the rate is. I can just tell you, as long as the city approves you to do it, you can do it, but the higher either pier and beam or the foundation, the higher it is, the cheaper the insurance is in the future, okay? But you have to go above the floodplain. And I can tell you what the floodplain elevation is, where it is, where it should flood at, okay? What questions have you guys come across when it comes to flood that you're not aware of, or that you've had that you weren't sure what the answer was?
I have a question.
Sure.
So speaking of Bastrop, I had a couple of clients that were looking in a certain community that was really close to the Colorado, and they were told that they were not in a floodplain, but when you look on MLS, it showed that they were in the 500 year, which I gathered that that's not considered or labeled as flood zone. Is that right?
Correct. The 500-year floodplain is supposed to not flood, okay? Now, in the city of Austin, in March of this, in 2020, March of 20, something like that, the floodplains changed in the city of Austin. So it was both. If you're in a 500-year floodplain, then you're in the 100-year floodplain now. If you're in the 100-year floodplain, then you're in the screwed floodplain, okay? Like you're screwed. So the rate jumped up. And so even though it's in a 500-year floodplain and the water is that far away, guys, we've had 500-year floods in the last 7 years. We've had catastrophic storms. So like my advice for you is, hey, you're not in a floodplain, so that's great. But why don't we go ahead and still get flood insurance? It's cheap because you're in a 500-year floodplain. Let's just go ahead and get a policy. And a year from now, you can cancel. If there's been no issues, you can cancel. It only costs you anywhere between $250 and $300 a year. I mean, that's the cheapest piece of, when rain's coming down, the best peace of mind you can have is knowing you have flood insurance. You know what I mean? So for the first year, buy it. It's $300. I mean, realistically, I'm paying $400,000 for a house. What's $300 in the big scheme of things? You know what I mean? So it's $30 a month in my mortgage. So who really cares? So I would, in my advice, I would say you're not in a flood zone. It's a 500-year flood zone. It shouldn't happen, but you still can purchase if you want to. This would be my advice. Cool.
Thank you. Yes.
Now, let me give you, I'm not sure if y'all doing a lot of investors right now, but there's a big thing in Austin. Y'all are all Austin, a lot of Austin people here. So in the city of Austin, it's a big deal right now where I'm taking a house and I am buying it, and then I'm building an ADU, right? And I'm calling it a condo regime, and I'm making them 2 condo policies, and that's really cool. And I'm happy people are doing that because it's good for density and stuff like that. But there's a lot of complications when it comes to flood insurance and rebuilding. So if you've got an investor who's looking to do a condo regime flip and build an ADU and get involved there, just call me and let's walk through to make sure it's done correctly. The presentation I'm doing tomorrow with the city of Austin, he's going to go into more details about how the city. So you've got FEMA rating, and then you've got the city of Austin. They have a whole another software that they use for the city of Austin when it comes to flood, when it comes to rebuilding. So if I want to buy a house in Terrytown and do $200,000 of renovations to it, but it's in a flood zone, you have to go through the city of Austin and go through the flood department, and it's more complicated. So just here's what I'll tell you this. I've done presentations with the people who do MLS, and it was literally like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, hey, y'all's software is wrong. You know that, right? They're like, well, we know that, but it's right in a lot of scenarios. And I was like, you're gonna get people in trouble making them think that MLS, when y'all click on that thing on the top right hand that says flood map stuff, that's old. It literally says 2000. The last time it was updated was 2008. And I was like, guys, it was updated in 2021 in March, and it was updated again in October of 2021, but you're still pulling information from like 2008 or 2018. So just understand, it's a good place to go for general info, but if you're not 100%, just text me and say, Paul, here's the address, here's the situation, and we'll respond back and help you out, okay? Because you just don't want to get too close to closing and find out information that wasn't correct and have drama, okay? That's all I got, guys.
I have a question.
Sure.
So are you saying that any homeowner now, doesn't matter who they are, let's say they come to Allstate or USA, Farmers, anybody, they get a homeowner's policy for, just insurance.
Mhm.
Part of that insurance policy is paying FEMA,
No,
or do you have to get the flood insurance and then part of that goes to FEMA?
correct. Everything goes with, well, any FEMA policy. So I sell home insurance, which is fire, theft, vandalism, hail, stuff like that, right? That's casualty insurance. And then a separate policy is flood insurance, okay? And all that premium goes to FEMA, okay? But you can buy a third party insurance, which goes to an insurance company like USAA, and then they have their own internal flood department and they cut the check, okay? Now they buy reinsurance from FEMA, but don't even get into all that, okay? But the check comes from USAA, it doesn't come from FEMA. So there's two policies out there, FEMA, which we've been talking about, and then third party, which is directly with an insurance company. Most people buy FEMA because it's cheaper, just so you know, 90%. Okay?
Thank you.
Perfect. That's all I got, guys. If you are interested, sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
I'm brand new, and on Anne Marie's question, so, yeah, you want to say, okay, 250, that's not much, that'll give you the insurance, but more than that, you don't want them to be in the risk of a flood, right?
Correct.
When they're buying, so you want to advise them.
Correct.
And MLS is saying 500-year zone, and it's not really, I don't know, what's the best way to advise them?
My advice to you is, my job is to protect you to protect your family in the future, okay? There has been either five or seven 500-year storms in the last, so there's been 5 storms in the last 7 years, right? 500-year storms that are only supposed to happen once every 500 years. It's happened 7 times, 5 times in 7 years. Yeah. Does that make sense? And so my advice is, it's a good peace of mind insurance to purchase. It's up to you. Hey, I'm all about disclosure. I'm all about disclosing everything, okay? I would put in an email saying, hey, this is in a 500-year flood zone. You're not required to buy it. You could consider it for peace of mind insurance. It's documented that you recommended it, and then let them choose from there. Does that make sense? But you and I guys, we all know that most people are buying a house that's the top of their budget. We're trying to get everything in to make sure it all fits because it's their dream house. And so every dollar counts. So they can still buy it in the future. They just have to wait 30 days before it goes into effect. So they can wait, they can close today and say 6 months from now, I want to buy this policy. They can still buy it, no problem, but they have to wait 30 days. So they can't just call and say, hey, there's a massive hurricane coming to Texas. I want flood insurance right now. You can't do that. Does that make sense? So that's the only thing about 30 days. You have to wait 30 days to buy a policy after closing.
Okay.
So just good advice. Yeah, I will tell you, by doing this, you guys control everything. They're gonna do whatever you tell them to do. If you say, use Paul, they're gonna use Paul. If they say, use Tyler, they're gonna use Tyler. This title company, they're gonna do everything you recommend them to do because they trust you for everything. So your advice means gold to them. Go above and beyond and protect them for all potential options, stuff like that, for your client. And if they can't afford it now, 3 months from now, you can purchase it then. Does that make sense? There's nothing preventing you in the future to purchase a policy for protection.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Now, one more thing. Who here has a Realty One sticker on the side of their car? Raise your hand. Okay. Don't.
Not
You're asking
anymore.
who has one or who needs one?
Don't do that. Okay. You can do it. But if you rear end someone, okay, the first thing you do is you get out of your car, you grab that sticker, you rip it off as quick as possible, and then you go check on the person and see if they're okay, okay? Because what you just did is you tied your business entity to your personal entity, okay? And now they can sue both, okay? So unless you have a commercial auto insurance policy, then you want to not do that. You can do it, but just be extra careful. Make sure there's like a business rider on your car insurance policy to cover that, okay? But if you rear end someone, then you just became a victim of the funk, you know, all the lawyers who are going after business owners, you just became a victim. So if you do that, if you want to advertise in your car, you should do that. But just make sure you have the right insurance policy in force when you do that, because you have tied two entities together, your business and your personal, okay?
Okay.
So if you have any general questions about car insurance, auto insurance, condos, condo regimes, I'd love to be your expert. You have my cell phone number in the future. I'm the cookie guy. A lot of people know me as a cookie guy. I'll be there tomorrow dropping off cookies at both offices. And so, like I said, if you do want to get a bigger detail into what we're talking about, tomorrow we're teaching a class at noon up in North Austin, and City of Austin will be there as well to cover that, okay? Thank you all for everything. I appreciate all your referrals and your relationship, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you,
Okay,
Paul.
thanks.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.